The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty God, Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning with full hearts. We thank you for the blessings of this life and the world you created for us. As we gather to learn more about the history of our cherished congregation, specifically as it relates to our music program, we give glory to you for the gift of music. Our worship would not be complete without it. Music enhances our worship and brings us closer to you. We give thanks also for the many musicians who have offered their gifts to Christ Church over the years. And we ask that you continue to bless our Christ Church community as we reflect on our past while striving to make tomorrow even brighter. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen. Good morning. We are happy to be with you again today. You'll be happy to know that contrary to a month ago when I had a bad nightmare about the Georgia Bulldogs, I'm in a much better mood this morning. Although it seems that some people are experiencing a bit of a Texas hangover this morning. Hopefully we'll have a good crowd. They'll come to atone for all of the things they yelled at the TV last night, except for the things directed at the refs. Those were all true and warranted. But we're in a better mood, aren't we? Super excited to be joined by Jonathan Poe this morning, and also excited that so many members of our choir are able to attend today. They usually are busy practicing and rehearsing during these forums, and usually have to watch on YouTube, so we're happy to have you all here as well. Before we go any further, let's just take a minute and just recognize Jonathan and all of our choir members, if we can, all they do for our church, huh? Let's do that. Our bicentennial year continues to roll along. Merchandise is available in the Herald House after church. Will somebody be over there after church?
That's correct.
After church today, if you still haven't gotten a bicentennial t-shirt, there's also a lot of wood things that were made from the tree that was cut down in the front yard. Crosses and bowls and vases and all sorts of neat things. So go over there and check that out and get some cookbooks as well. And then don't forget that the parish picnic is this afternoon at 4 o'clock. You are asked and invited to wear your bicentennial t-shirt. So that's another good reason to go buy a t-shirt today. Let's see here. So we have some upcoming forums. Next month, November 17th, will be our first of two sessions that Susan Welsh is going to do on our stained glass windows. Just so everyone is clear, she's not going to do the same session twice. The session in January will be other windows. So she's going to do about half the windows in one and the other half in the other session, give or take. And we haven't quite yet finalized if that's going to be in here or if it's going to be in the church. We'll be sure to advertise that and let people know. But today we plan to go through the history of the music program at Christ Church. As we all know and agree, our music plays such a critical role, in our worship and our liturgy, but also really in how it draws us together. It creates a communal sort of experience. It has a way of touching our soul in a way that the spoken word doesn't. And it pulls really our worship together and pulls us into it, brings us closer to God. I think we'd all agree with that. I find myself sometimes when a hymn starts, just a few bars in, a few notes in, I recognize the hymn, and it brings this sort of sense of peace over you. And that's really what music does for us. This morning we'll spend a lot of time talking about the full history of the organs that we've had at Christ Church. We'll talk some about our organists, all good things, and the choir and some notable members of the choir in the past, and maybe even some saucy controversies related to our music program over the years. That's why you're all here, right? Everybody loves a good controversy. I think we'd all agree that the organ really is the centerpiece of our music program. I don't think there's any disputing that. Let's get into the organs that we've had. We all know about Macon's musical heritage, right? We have Otis Redding, Little Richard, the Allman Brothers. Half of REM was born in Macon. Jason Aldean now is a modern figure. But you can really make the argument that Macon's musical heritage started right here at Christ Church. That's because in 1834, Christ Church had the very first organ at any church in Macon. Now, we're not certain that that's the first organ in Macon, but it certainly was the first one at a church in Macon. There might have been a few at private residences at that point. This was when our original church was constructed. Not a whole lot is known about that organ. Very little is written really in our histories about it. Every time it's mentioned, it's simply described as a sweet-toned organ, quote. That means a little bit more to Jonathan and organ experts than it does to you or me, but it still is pretty vague in terms of details. We don't know manufacturer or size or anything of that nature necessarily, although you would suspect it was pretty small. The organ caused quite a stir in town. It was a bit of a new phenomenon, right, in this new city. And it brought a lot of people to Christ Church to check it out. Here's an ad that appeared in the Georgia Messenger newspaper on June 26th of 1834, advertising an organ concert at Christ Church, where the vestry had granted this gentleman, Mr. Hudson, the permission to perform a concert of sacred music assisted by the choir, and that's an important note there because that means that the choir goes all the way back to at least 1834. That concert was on Friday night, June 27th, and like I said, people wanted to come hear the organ, this neat thing. That organ only lasted about 10 years until it was replaced. In 1845, it was replaced by an organ from E&G Hook Company, Opus 62. For those of you who aren't aware, the opus number of an organ essentially is the sequence in which that manufacturer built their organs. So Opus 62 is the 62nd organ that Hook produced. That's how you sort of read that. The Hook organ was not large. It was only one manual. And getting back to trying to not be too technical, that means there's one keyboard, one set of keys. That helps me. You know what that means, but that's beyond me. It was built in a cabinet. Hook was, as Jonathan might mention, was sort of started as a furniture woodworker, and so it was built in a way that sort of resembled an armoire, larger, a piece of furniture even. It was placed in the rear gallery of the original church, and it was later moved to our current church in 1852, where it was still located in the gallery. We do not have a photo of the Hook organ that was in Christ Church. But after consulting with organ history experts, and I've spent a couple of hours on the phone with them several months ago, they have provided this photo of a Hook organ that they believe most closely resembles the Hook organ we would have had. So it's the closest we can get to knowing what our organ looked like. This is Opus 153 of Hook, built in 1853. There were very few one-manual Hook organs built. And so that's really where the search started, is trying to find pictures of other one-manual Hook organs. But you see how it looks like a large armoire, a piece of furniture. And that's largely what we suspected ours looked like. Jonathan's going to tell us now a little bit more about Hook and why that's a neat thing.
Good morning. So E&G Hook was a prominent American pipe organ manufacturer based in Boston. operating from 1827 to 1935. Founded by brothers Elias and George Greenleaf Hook, the company became a leading force in American organ building during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Hook organs were renowned for their high-quality construction, craftsmanship, and distinctive sound. They were known for their clear and powerful tone, with a focus on the romantic style that was popular during the late 19th century. This style was emphasized rich, full sounds and expressive capabilities, making Hook organs well suited for both church and concert settings. The company built over 2,000 organs, many of which are still in use today. Some notable examples include the 1864 organ at Mechanics Hall in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I encourage you to maybe go Google that and see that amazing case. It's enormous and it's gorgeous. It was very large, 3-manual organ for the time. And then another prominent instrument is at First Unitarian Church, in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. That organ is significant because it remains unaltered and it's in its original condition. E&G Hook's legacy lies in their significant contribution to American organ building. Their instruments helped shape the sound of American church music and influenced generations of organists and composers. The company's dedication to quality and craftsmanship ensured that many of their instruments continue to be played and appreciated today, serving as a testament to their enduring impact on American musical culture. And just to speak very briefly about what it means to be sweet-toned, I'm sure that you would agree, while the Fisk has very sweet tones, is quite present. And these particular early American organs would have a lot of foundational stops at what we call 8-foot pitch, meaning if you went to a piano and played middle C, an 8-foot pitch pipe would also be middle C on the keyboard. And so having a lot of those 8-foot sounds just increase the richness and fullness of the sound without having so much higher upper work, which later organs eventually will get.
I'm so glad to have you here to tell us all that, because that is beyond me. Wow, that is great. About 30 years later, in about 1875, the Hook organ was replaced by a larger 2-manual organ from J.H. Wilcox and Company. The exact date of that organ is a bit unclear. There's some conflicts and conflicting details in some of the sources, but 1875 is pretty close to when that was installed. It was also located in the rear gallery. It was purchased for $2,900, and we do not have any photos of the Wilcox, although we've tried to sort of do the similar sort of thing as we did with the Hook. The Wilcox organ was notable because it was Opus 9, only the 9th organ that Wilcox produced. And so very, very neat that we had that here in Macon.
One little fact about J.H. Wilcox, sources say he was born in Savannah, and some people say he wasn't. But most of the sources now agree that he was born in Savannah, but must have moved to the Boston area at a young age. All that to say, here's a little bit of drama. So the drama begins. So J.H. Wilcox worked for E&G Hook, and there may have been artistic differences, or who knows, maybe J.H. Wilcox just wanted to go out and start his own firm. But basically what he did was he took 3 other factory workers with him, and rather important ones too. So J.H. Wilcox and Company was founded in 1869 on Washington Street in Boston Highlands by J.H. Wilcox. He took with him Mark Plaisted, G.V. Nordstrom, and George S. Hutchings, all former employees of E&G Hook. The new firm played a significant role in American organ building during the 19th century. Their combined knowledge and valuable expertise and reputation in the pipe organ building industry was crucial to this company's success. In the 1870s is probably their largest period of growth, fueled by increasing prosperity and the construction of new churches and concert halls. Wilcox capitalized on this demand by producing high-quality pipe organs that combined Hook's traditional craftsmanship but with modern innovations. So all these fancy things you see on pipe organs were starting to come into fruition at the organist's capability, They incorporated new technologies and designs, such as improved wind systems, voicing techniques. They created instruments known for their rich and responsive action. The organs produced by this firm were considered the best or expert craftsmanship in organ building for that time. And that's quite a statement, because E and G Hook were extremely phenomenal instruments, incredible instruments. But to say, and this is quoted from The History of the Organ in the United States by Orpha Osh, which is one of our staples in the organ literature world. Quote, in the period of about 1870, J.H. Wilcox and Company probably did the finest work in America. And I think the reason why we probably have a J.H. Wilcox and Company here at Christ Church was its connection with E&G Hook. And I would guess that a lot of the original organ that we had was incorporated into this new instrument, just to expand it and make it larger.
It's a drama. Musicians and their drama. He's laughing because he knows it's true. In 1908, a decision was made that revolutionized the music program at Christ Church. The quartet choir that had existed going back to 1834 was expanded to become a full choral ensemble like we have today. And the choir, the choir was moved at that time from the gallery to the chancel. This move naturally led to a conversation about if the choir is going to be in the chancel, maybe it would make sense for the organ to be in the chancel as well. And so a move had begun to get a new organ and replace the Wilcox with an organ in the chancel. So the fourth organ we've had at this point was from W.W. Kimball and Company. It was located in the chancel with pipes on the left side of the chancel. It was a 3-manual organ. You notice a trend here. We went from 1 to 2 to 3. Here's a picture of that organ and the pipes in the church. The organ pipes were located on the left side of the chancel, and they were beautifully stenciled, as you can see here. We still have some of these organ pipes today, and they might just make an appearance in the future at some point.
May I go back?
Sure.
I just want to say personally, I would have loved to have heard this instrument. I bet it was quite spectacular. But also, it's sort of dramatic in the room. And the case design is quite impressive, but also so fitting with the architecture of the building. The pipes themselves sort of making Gothic arch windows in a way. But yes, so.
Leave it there for a second.
Okay.
I forgot my pointer this morning, but just to the left of the first column there, you can see a mirror. So the console of the organ was right under the pipes, kind of pushed against the wall there. So
That's right behind the eagle.
That's right.
You can see.
Right behind the lectern, between the lectern and the column. That's right.
Yes, so this console or key desk would have been attached to the organ, and the organist would have been facing the organ, and that's what the mirror is for. But so about Kimball a little bit here. Founded in 1857 by William Wallace Kimball, and holds a significant place in the history of American organ building. While they initially focused on reed organs, which we have in Jones Chapel, Kimball began producing pipe organs in the late 19th century, quickly gaining recognition for their craftsmanship and innovative designs. During the early 1900s, Kimball emerged as one of the leading pipe organ manufacturers in the United States. Their instruments graced a wide range of venues, from churches and concert halls to theaters and residences. Kimball organs were known for their rich, full sound, impressive tonal resources, and their reliable mechanical action. So every organ we've spoken about so far has all been mechanical, in that when you press a key down, it moves a slat of wood, which then goes to a valve and pulls the valve open so that the air can go through the chest to the pipe, through the chest into the pipe. And so all of that happens at the fingertips of the organist. A lot of new organs are electrified, and we'll talk about that with the next instrument. But one of Kimball's notable contributions was their embrace of electropneumatic action, which we did not have here. But later they started experimenting with this. This allowed for the console, or key desk, now a console, to be placed anywhere in the room, and gave much versatility to places where the choir maybe needed to be somewhere else and the pipes needed to be somewhere else. And so the organist could sit at the console and be near the choir, but the pipes were somewhere else. And so that was one of the major technology improvements of the century. Kimball organs from the early 1900s are prized for their historical significance and enduring musicality. They represent a golden age of American organ building where artistry and innovation converge to create instruments of exceptional beauty and power. Many of these historic instruments continue to inspire and delight audiences today, serving as a testament to Kimball's legacy of craftsmanship and musical excellence. And I'm delighted that we still have these pipes. They're currently in a safe location under the church.
A very dusty location, I might add.
Yeah, they're quite dirty, but at least they have survived over these years. I mean, imagine that all these years ago, and we still have at least part of that, maybe even some of that woodwork is still down there. You want to take questions?
No, not yet. Or unless somebody had one.
Almost.
Did you tell us where the console was?
So it's
The bottom right corner.
so if you recognize the lectern, there's a mirror right to the back of it. Literally right below that is where the organist would sit. Yeah, sort of behind that chair. I'm not sure whose chair that would be.
I don't know either.
Somebody important. Yes, 3 manuals and pedal.
What was the first organ that you spoke of that had a pedal board?
The J.H. Wilcox did have a pedal board. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good.
So what's interesting, if you've noticed, is we've had preeminent manufacturer after preeminent manufacturer. It's really pretty special, if you think about it, going from Hook to Wilcox and then to Kimball. So then we move on in the timeline to the summer of 1953, when Christ Church purchased its newest organ, and we had to go from 3 manuals now to 4 manuals. Bigger is better, as they say, in Texas, except when you're talking about points you didn't score. Never mind. The Moeller organ was purchased for $42,000. It continued the trend of being placed in the chancel, but now that it was a much larger organ, we went from having pipes on one side of the church to both sides of the church. And as you'll see, from this picture, the organ pipes were screened by these ornate wooden screens on both sides of the chancel. Much of this, when the molar was eventually removed, much of this screen was preserved and some of it reused on the back wall behind the altar of Jones Chapel. So you can go in Jones Chapel and you can actually see some of that screen work ordaining the walls in there. Here's a picture of the console from the molar organ. It looks like a very 1980s sort of scrapbook family photo, doesn't it? It shows the 4 separate keyboards, and Jonathan is going to tell us all about why you might need 4 keyboards and all those knobs. It's a lot.
There are a lot of wonderful memes online about these consoles. I encourage you to Google them. So a little bit about Molar first, and then I'll talk about this picture. But MP Molar Company, founded in 1875 by Danish immigrant Matthias Peter Molar, was a giant in American organ building. By the mid-20th century, they were the largest builder of pipe organs in the world, known for their high-quality instruments and prolific output, once boasting an organ a day out of their factory. Molar organs were renowned for their robust American classic, now it has a name, sound, characterized by bright, clear tones and powerful reeds. This aesthetic, solidified in the early 20th century, continued into their 1960s instruments, though with some evolving trends. During this decade, Molar, like many organ builders, embraced some elements of what we call the Neo-Baroque movement, an effort to maybe bring some more European sounds back into the organ, which favored a more articulate sound instead of this lush, full, rich tone that kind of just flowed, something more da-da-da-da-da. This influence can be seen in some Molar organs from this period, which might include brighter flue pipes and sharper sounding reeds. And when I mean sharper sounding reeds, yes, not so much today is what we want. However, Molar largely retained their signature sound, producing organs that were still firmly rooted in the American classic tradition. Sadly, there was quite a large Molar at the City Auditorium, which was recently removed, and we won't talk about that today. But 1923, it was installed and completely unaltered in most every tonal way. And it's a shame that instrument's gone, but that would have been a wonderful example of this early American tradition, sound, But Molar produced a large number of organs installed in churches and institutions across the United States. The largest organ they ever built was the one that closed down the factory. And it's at Calvary Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was built between the years of 1986 to 1990. And it's a massive 5-manual instrument with 205 ranks of pipes, totaling 11,499 pipes. And that was their opus 11,000 and something organ, which is incredible. Real quickly about the console. So yes, 4 manuals is amazing. Anybody wants to purchase one for us, we'll put it back up front. Kidding. So these keyboards signified each division of the organ. And so what you're seeing here is a great division, a swell division, which you could open shades and close shades to make the sound louder or softer. A choir division, which does the same thing, but maybe has more colorful sounds like clarinets and French horns and things like that. And then the top manual was most likely a solo division. And we'll talk about another division of the organ in just a minute. But one thing to note about this instrument, I want you to remember this number. Yes, it's 4 manuals, and yes, it's the largest church organ that Christ Church has had yet. But it was only 37 ranks and pipes, and that means the rows of pipes, which you'll see shortly. But keep that number in your brain when we get to our current organ.
Okay, I'll just talk about it. So, moving on a little bit, and we're going to pick up the pace just a little bit because we know people have to get ready for church. In 1957, what they call an antiphonal organ was installed in the rear balcony. This was attached to the molar organ. It was played through the console. In fact, Jonathan will kind of tell you that some of the knobs on the far right would have been for the antiphonal organ, where they could play and have music coming not only from the pipes in front, but also in pipes in the rear of the church. So the antiphonal organ was installed in 1957. Some of the Kimball pipes, some of those stenciled pipes, were used in the balcony. In fact, one of William B. Johnston's large paintings that had been donated to the church was placed up in the balcony, and there's a picture of the organ pipes sort of surrounding that painting. That's the largest painting that the church owns, but it is so large that it's not here. It's on display and on loan to the Hay House, which is where you can go see it. Our timeline, of course, sort of comes to an end in terms of our progression in March of 2000, when our current cherished C.B. Fisk Company organ Opus 115 was installed. The organ cost about $600,000, plus some additional construction costs related to making sure the balcony could support it. It signaled the first time we went backwards in size, although size is sort of relative to what it really does, as I understand it. So we went from a 4-manual down to a 2-manual, but there were certainly reasons for that. The Fisk organ marked the return of the organ to the gallery. That opened up the chancel for other renovations and alterations. The sacristies on both sides were renovated. The steps on both sides were added that we go down after communion. And Jonathan will tell us a lot more about the Fisk as I sort of scroll through pictures quickly.
Yes, so remember that number 37 ranks for the molar. This Fisk is 38, but over 2 manuals. There's a reason for that. Technology has improved, and now computer systems, they call CAD, lays out pipe placement for you. And so a machine drills the holes where the pipes are going to sit, and you can get more in the space now than they could back then. So that's the short version of that. I'm not going to go through the tonal analysis just to save time, except for to say the wonderful thing about this Fisk organ is, and that's what a rank of pipes is, going from little to tall. One row is 1 rank. So we have 38 of those total throughout the organ. This Fisk brings all of those tonal designs that we've talked about before together in such a perfect and seamless design. Early American sounds, European sounds, French reeds, which you'll hear. You heard last week, you heard at my concert. They're quite present, but they're glorious. German-sounding reeds, which are fatter and big, bold sounds, things like that. But why Fisk, you know? Fisk is not an inexpensive company. As you can see, it's now $1.4 million to rebuild it if something happened to it today. But C.B. Fisk pipe organs are renowned worldwide for their exceptional craftsmanship, tonal beauty, and historical authenticity. Each instrument is meticulously handcrafted, representing the pinnacle of organ building. Opus 115 stands as a testament to Fisk's dedication to excellence, showcasing a harmonious blend of traditional techniques and innovative designs. And I never get tired of playing it. And my teacher from Appalachian was here practicing yesterday for his concert on November the 3rd, and you're in for a treat.
I'm sure many of you remember this day from the fall of 1999 when the organ was delivered and arrived by semi-truck. The entire congregation paraded out, lined the sidewalks, and carried each piece of the organ in. T-shirts were made. Who still has their "I'm an organ donor" T-shirt? Yes.
And bags.
Yes. Everything was carried in, laid in very specific places in the nave, organized, getting ready for its installation, which of course was meticulous, of course. Now we're going to turn our attention to some of the magnificent organists we've had over time. Jonathan's going to walk us through those real quick, and then we'll get into the choir a little bit. We will get you to church, I promise.
I'm playing the prelude, so there you go. So, of course, there is an organist that we know of before Doris Jelks, but I'll let Russ talk about that after I have to scoot out. But Doris Jelks, of course, being here the longest from 1919 to 1982, and Ellen is here today, Doris's granddaughter. I won't embarrass you to make you stand or anything, but I'm glad you're here. It's great to see you. Following Doris was John Osteen, and he also taught at Wesleyan. Then Rick Nelson, who recently passed away. Fletcher Anderson, who's still very much alive, and I spoke to him the other day. Bob Paris, as you all know. And then Susan McDuffie filled in for a short time before Jack was hired. And then you still have me. So there you go. But a little bit about Doris that you may or may not know. She came directly from Syracuse University, having finished her bachelor's degree. And I hope I get this right, Elle. And came to work at Wesleyan. And so after starting Wesleyan, I believe 1917-ish, she took the job here at Christ Church in 1919. Eventually, in her tenure, she became the department chair of music at Wesleyan. She was given an honorary doctorate by Wesleyan. So things like that. Her contributions to music at Christ Church, but to Macon in general, are unsurpassed, really. She's the reason why we have this amazing choir program, organ program, and she was a phenomenal pianist as well.
Good. You want me to just talk about the chimes real quick?
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and go?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Whenever you need to go.
Oh, yeah.
Good? Okay. You might be wondering why I'm showing you a picture of our church bell. It's not really part of our music program, but behind the bell are some of our 12 tubular chimes. Those are the things on the right-hand side. In the interest of time, we won't go through all of that, but those chimes have been recently restored and are in the process of being reinstalled so that you will soon hear beautiful chimes sounding at the quarter hour and the top of the hour, and all of Macon will hear it, and it will be magnificent. There is a plaque in the narthex that outlines who all of the chimes were donated in memory of. The congregation gave 2 of the chimes in memory of Christ Church members who had served in both the Civil War and in World War I. They were installed in 1923, so that's why World War II, for example, or Vietnam or Korea weren't included. And then others were given in memory of loved ones who had passed away. Jonathan's going to scoot out to go get ready, but we're going to chug on here. The conversation about our musical worship is really completely incomplete. That's not right. Is incomplete if we don't also talk about our choir and all of the talented vocalists who have graced us with their talents as they stand up to go get ready to sing. As we saw earlier, the choir dates back to at least 1834. Until 1908, the choir had been located in the balcony. It was mainly a quartet, 2 men, 2 women. But one of the first changes that our new rector made, and that was the Reverend John Bunting, was that he wanted to expand the choir to a full choral ensemble. And we still have that today. The choir was moved to the chancel. The choir stalls were installed. Those are the same ones that we have today in the chancel. Over the years, there have been countless members of the choir, including a few notable individuals. The first one I'd like to mention was Mary Schofield. She was a dedicated member of the quartet choir for about 20 years until she retired in 1902 due to poor health. She died a few years later in 1908, but the organ that we installed, the Kimball organ, was actually built and installed in her memory because she was such a beloved member of the music program at Christ Church. Here's an excerpt that was written about her and her service. Quote, "During a period of about 20 years, she did her work in this choir most conscientiously, always ready to help in any way she could, besides giving her very wonderful soprano voice for the benefit and uplifting of the Christ Church people. I say uplifting because her voice was so full of soul that it almost inevitably brought us nearer to God's footstool." I love how that's worded. That article was written by the next notable person of our choir, and probably the most notable in all of our choir's history, Mr. Luther Williams. To say that Mr. Williams was a dedicated member of Christ Church would be a gross understatement. He served as warden and on the vestry. He was one of 3 people elected to a life term on the board of directors in 1924. He was highly revered by the parish. Mr. Williams was also, of course, the mayor of Macon. He served 3 different terms, interrupted at one point by the misguided election of Wallace Miller. But it always says something, right, when you're voted out of office and then only 2 years later you're voted back into office. Among his notable accomplishments as mayor, Luther Williams is credited as being the person who brought baseball to Macon. And of course, when the state baseball stadium was built, the city council voted to name it in his honor because it was really his vision and his advocacy that made it a reality. Mr. Williams served as the director of the quartet choir for many, many years. Most incredibly, he sang in the choir for 56 years, surpassed only by Doris Jelks' 63 years on the organ. Mr. Williams and his family and his wife Mary had 11 children. It's an amazing picture. They just kind of pop off the picture here. The entire family, minus one, is pictured here. He was born in 1853 in Wales and immigrated to the United States in 1871. He was a banker by trade, starting and running his own bank here in Macon from 1919 until his death in 1936. I also love this photo as it shows Mr. Williams' passion for singing in the choir and serving the church was something that he passed on to his children. Here he's pictured with 5 of his children, all vested, robed, and ready to sing in the choir. That passion extended beyond just his own children. His daughter-in-law, Louise Curry Williams, who was married to his son Frederick, ended up nearly matching his tenure. She sang in the choir for 53 years herself. And Luther Williams' legacy remains at Christ Church today. Our very own Wendy Blanks, who's here today, is Luther Williams' great-grandson. And one of the things that we all love about Christ Church is the connection between our current members and our past. As amazing as our musical heritage is, I don't want to go there yet, it's also interesting to talk about some of these controversies that have rocked our music program over the years, and I'll be quick. There's 2 such controversies that are significant enough to be noted in our history books in writing. The first occurred in 1855, when some members of the congregation, this was right after our current church was built, when some members of the congregation accused the organist at the time of not being sufficiently pious. Here's the transcription of the letter that Ernst Grimm. If we have another child, we might go with Ernst. How about that? Ernst Grimm wrote to the vestry saying that he suspects that because he's Lutheran, that people in the Episcopal Church didn't think he was religious enough to be the organist. So he resigned, and his resignation was promptly accompanied by the resignation of 3 of the 4 people in the quartet. So our music program almost went right down the drain. But harmony was restored, but it highlights how important the music program is to people, the emotions surrounding it. The next and far more disruptive controversy occurred in 1869. The Reverend Henry K. Reese was our rector from 1855 until 1869. He had established a mission church at St. Paul's. That's the St. Paul's in Macon today. Although Mary Baber and some other women from Christ Church had been leading a Sunday school over close to Tatnall Square Park for a number of years prior to that. Reverend Reese had established St. Paul's. The Oxford movement was a movement that had begun in Great Britain largely and in Europe, which sought to instill more ancient church practices into the Anglican liturgy and to make it more high church back then. A lot of people associated those practices, though, with an attempt to sort of Catholicize the Anglican Church, and they resisted it. But Reverend Reese had spent time in 1868 or 1869, I guess it was 1868 in hindsight, with one of the leading proponents of the Oxford movement in the United States, Bishop Doane, the Bishop of New Jersey. He found himself becoming enamored with some of the virtues of the Oxford movement and returned to Macon and decided to install some of those practices at St. Paul's. And so he started a full choral worship service that involved singing the prayers of the people and either the Nicene or Apostles' Creed. It was warmly received at St. Paul's, so he said, well, we'll do that over at Christ Church too. So he started with the children's Sunday school, to which many parents, and especially the vestry, strongly recoiled. They did not want their children singing the prayers or the creed. Christ Church was a church that adhered very closely to the formality and the regimen of the Book of Common Prayer. And they did not like anything distracting us from that. The word got back to Reverend Reese that people weren't happy, so he wrote a letter to the vestry essentially acknowledging that and saying, look, if you don't want me to continue, I'll stop. Okay, great. Well, the vestry responded and very strongly asserted that they did indeed want him to stop that practice, but they went a little further and kind of threw a bomb on the whole deal. They had to go further. They weren't happy with just saying, yeah, we don't like that. They then had to bring up the fact that they felt that a lot of the parish wasn't happy with Reverend Reese. There's a great discontent, a general dissatisfaction pervading the congregation. And this led to a series of back and forth letters between the vestry, Reverend Reese, the bishop got involved, asking the vestry to withdraw their letter. The congregation signed a petition asking the vestry to withdraw their letter. Reverend Reese eventually decided in the midst of all of this, he'd simply had enough. He submitted his resignation to become the first rector at St. Paul's. The vestry did withdraw their letter, and they tried to get him to stay, but it was too late. This is a picture of St. Paul's original building, which is just down the hill from their current building. Reverend Reese went to become their first rector, and with him took about 75 members of Christ Church. The vestry had vastly overestimated how unhappy people were. And in their hasteness to exert their authority, essentially splintered the church. 75 people. Imagine today if 75 of our members went tomorrow to another church. We'd feel it. We wouldn't feel it quite as much as they did in 1869, but in 1869 it was at least half the church. So it was a tremendous disruption to Christ Church. That is both the story of how St. Paul's began as well as how strong our emotions run as it pertains to our music program. That's really all I have. In the interest of time, we got to get to church. Jonathan's going to start playing the music in just a few minutes on that beautiful organ we've talked about. I'm sorry we had to glaze over a few things today, but I hope you enjoyed it. And it was great to have all of you here. Don't forget the parish picnic this afternoon at 4. And we'll see you all back again in November to learn some about our stained glass windows. Thank you, guys.